If you'd like to make your NFL games a little more interesting, you've come to the right place. It's the Even Money Podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik.
Yeah, Vegas, baby. Vegas. It is the Even Money Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, classic journeyman. So good to be back in the saddle with my buddy Steve Fezzik after a couple weeks off for various travel reasons. He is the only, and I repeat, only 2-time winner of the Super Bowl of professional football gambling. It's the Super Contest at the Westgate. You should follow him on social media like I do. He's actually kind of hilarious on it, at Fezzik Sports. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.com/Ross Tucker NFL. So if you're on a social media platform, I pretty much am too. I either tweet about football, beer, or food. Those are kind of my things. Those are the things I post about for the most part. Videos, pictures, whatever. We are at Ross Tucker Pod, meaning you can get clips to these shows. Not only this one, but the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, College Draft. You can get the highlight clips at Ross Tucker Pod, Twitter and Instagram. That's also where the show gets posted right away, so you know when a new episode is up. And, of course, everything we do now is on YouTube as well, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. We will get into some email questions today. We will get into syndicates because I got to be kind. I got a lot of feedback on last week's episode. So I would like to discuss it with Steve. But first, Steve, we must start with you have an MLB All-Star game bet, which is tonight, which means we need to say that right away and get this show up and posted so that people can take advantage of it. Give it to me, Steve.
So I'm all over the under. I played the under at 8. The 8s are moving to 7.5. It's fine to play under 7.5. Obviously, I prefer the 8. But perfect storm here. MLB All-Star games in general go under. And it makes a lot of sense. The best pitching stops the best hitting. Further, the best pitchers, when they only have to throw one inning, can bring their very best stuff. And because it's a cross league, the hitters haven't seen those pitchers at all or very much during the course of a year. So there's a reason why we've seen, I think it's 12-3 to the under the last 15 All-Star games. Further, this game's in Dodger Stadium with a twilight start, 4:30 local time. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for the batters with the lighting on the twilight start. And one more glitch on top of all this. We're always worried about extra innings in baseball games that can kill our under. Well, this game has a rule that it's going to be decided, Ross, with a shootout, essentially. Home run shootout if it's tied after 9 innings. Jeffrey Benson at Circa has already confirmed if you bet at Circa and it's 3-3 at the end of 9 innings, that is going to be the graded final score, 3-3 in terms of the total. So none of the runs in extra innings will count towards the total in this shootout. All the more reason I really like the under 7.5 best bet.
I was just going to ask you about that because I heard about that this morning, the like mini home run derby that they would have if it's a tie. And I was wondering how that would be graded for the over under. I'm glad you knew the answer. I have 2 questions on that. Now, listen, I don't follow baseball very closely. I'm pretty open about that. Baseball season conflicts with my drinking and beach season, so I just don't follow it that closely. I like going to a game if it's not too hot. I like having a hot dog. I like the feel of the ballpark. But honestly, I'm just as happy going to a minor league game as I am a major league game. I can't tell the difference. They're all throwing 90 miles an hour. They're all hitting it far. Like, what's the difference to me? I don't know most of their names anyway. But you said two things I thought were interesting. I want to get your take on it. Number one, about the different pitcher each inning and they can bring their best stuff. Because a lot of people complain about starting pitchers not having complete games, not going late into the outing like they used to back in the day. There used to be all these complete games. Now they're all on pitch counts. And the thought process is it's all for health and preservation. They don't want these guys to get hurt, et cetera, Steve. But what you just said is on some level part of why they bring in these more relievers now in the middle innings, right? I mean, what you just said is partially why they do that. They bring in these guys for one inning or a couple batters that, you know, are specialists. They can give all their best for that smaller outing.
You nailed it. The analytics people hate the baseball managers where they let the starters face the lineups the third time through, or even worse, the fourth time through. The vast majority of pitchers regress big time when they start going the third time through the lineup. So it is rarely wrong in terms of maximizing the chance of winning any one ball game to pull your starter after he's faced 18 batters. Now, the problem with that is that it'll tax your bullpen severely by the end of the year. But if you're just trying to maximize winning any one individual game, unless you've got a Max Scherzer or an absolute stud pitching, you really should get him out of there after he's faced 18 batters.
The other thing you said, you know, the home run derby was last night. By far, Steve, by far, the most interest in baseball I've seen on my social media timeline the whole season. The home run derby has got to be the most talked about, watched event, maybe other than the World Series, maybe more than the World Series. So my question for you, Steve, is, and people are going to kill me for this, like, at what point do they say, you know what, somehow we got to incorporate that more into what we're doing here? That's what people like. You know, I mean, there's the XFL, you know, there's the USFL. At what point does somebody just come up with like a home run derby league where you go and you just watch individuals go against each other, hitting dingers, and, you know, maybe it's an hour instead of 3 hours, and you're happy?
Well, golf has a long driving championship, right? And people watch that. So
But that's not as cool. That's not as cool as a home run derby. Like hitting the ball far is cool, but it's not a home run.
I gotta say that I think MLB and these major sports leagues, they get it all wrong so many times. It just drives me crazy. An example is this home run derby. It used to be you could take pitches, wait, and it was optimal. There was no clock, and you'd wait for the perfect meatball to hit a home run. And it's so boring. The ball's never in play. They finally fixed it. Just have a running clock, and how many home runs can you hit in a certain amount of time? Such a better system that they finally got to. You know, MLB, I'm going to throw MLB under the bus here. They changed the rules about the total, and betting is such a big part of America, and they don't even disclose what's going to happen in this home run derby. What's the final score going to be if the National League homers 3 times and the American League homers 2, and you were 3-3 going into the 10th inning? This is stuff you absolutely have to have your ducks in a row and recognize that betting is such a big influence on your audience. People need to know what the rules are, for gosh sakes, not, oh, we'll let you know later what the final score and how we're going to tabulate it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point, Steve. The other point I would make that people need to know, clothing from Express is awesome. I mean, there's a couple different ways you could go. You could be like me and get some new vintage-inspired polos with the different collar details, fabrics, textures. You could get some new lightweight linen suits if you got some summer weddings coming up. They've got awesome denim with the just right stretch, which is important. You can get very comfortable denim. Find an outfit for every destination at Express, online or in store. Okay, Steve, we got to talk about something. We got to talk about betting syndicates. And I want to start with this. What is a betting syndicate, Steve, and what is it not?
So a betting syndicate is more than one person working together, betting and sharing the results. The most simplistic betting syndicate would be two dudes, Ross, and they just say, we're going to combine our forces. We are going to pool our money together. Let's assume they put the same amount of money. They each put $100,000 in, so they got $200,000, and now they're going to share all their bets and go 50-50 on all the results. And then it can scale upwards from that. The betting syndicates, my experience has been that most betting syndicates vary in size from 2 to about 10. Once you get past 10 people, it really becomes difficult to manage everything. I'll use maybe one of the biggest betting syndicates was the Billy Walters group. So Billy, his syndicate, he would employ, I believe, 4 to 6 handicappers that would give them all their numbers on their game. So these were people that weren't actually part of the betting part, but he was paying to provide information about who they liked each individual week. And then Billy Walters would have multiple guys actually betting for him that weren't actually getting a percentage of the results, but they were getting a percentage of the win that would happen. And this is documented in the Sharp Money. So the bettor would win like 20% of for the year of the bets that profited. And then there might be investors, people putting in different percentages that they might just invest money without actually actively being part of the syndicate. But for it to be manageable and get the accounting right, my experience has always been it works real well when the number of people, the big partners, are less. So once you get to about 10 people, you wind up doing accounting all day long instead of actually being able to work and do it effectively.
Can a betting syndicate have 100 people, Steve?
No, a betting syndicate, 100 people would just be too much. To be fair, I mean, I've got thousands of clients that buy my picks on some things. All right. They're not part of my syndicate. These are people that are completely independent that I'm giving betting advice to. And I'm saying, play the MLB game under tonight. That's not part of my syndicate. That's a client. That's totally different.
Got it. So what is a betting syndicate not? What is not a betting syndicate?
A betting syndicate is not someone where it's one way, where I'm just providing information from A to the person point B, and the person at point B never interacts with me other than just asking a general question about how do I get your services, Fezzik, and how do I get your plays. The people that are part of a syndicate, there's interaction. They can pick up the phone. They can talk to me. They can make suggestions about bets to be made. Obviously, that takes up a lot of time. I don't have time to talk to 100 people every day, every week. That just isn't going to happen. I will say this, along with people being directly part of a syndicate, there's also outside people. I'll use an example of my friends like Bill Crackman is not part of my betting syndicate, very sharp bettor. I will talk to him like 3 times a week and share information about what I'm playing. I've already bet something. I'm like, hey, this is a good bet. CFL. I really like this week. Hamilton, BC to go over 51. Shared it with Bill. He might say, hey, you know what, Fez? I can still get you an over 51. You want some? So he's not part directly of any syndicate I'm working with, but I work one-on-one with them selectively on things.
Got it. Okay. Reason why I'm bringing this up is because last week's guest, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't know anything about betting syndicates. I don't know anything about betting. I like to pick the NFL games. I like to bet on the NFL games with you guys here on the Even Money podcast, but I don't know anything about betting syndicates. I thought some of the answers didn't totally make sense to me and were a little bit surprising. but I don't really know any different, Steve.
Yeah, and so what happens when you ask someone, well, define your syndicate, and they kind of do, it's an answer. I don't want to get into politics, but sometimes some of the politicians, when they answer a question, it's like they're not even answering the question. They're just like talking about syndicates and the like. And it's almost like, well, can you give me it so a fifth grader can understand, or give me a real life example. I was in a betting syndicate, like with a group called the Hizzle Group back in the early 2000s. And we had Hizzle, we had David. I don't think he'd mind me saying David Hill. He owns a bunch of casinos in Washington now. And these guys were some of the most motivated guys ever. So every morning we were all partners. We were all about, 1/3 each. We were the investors. We put up the money. And we had like 3 guys running around Vegas everywhere. This is before betting apps were around. And they would go ahead and put in bets. Now, it's illegal to pay a bettor to bet for you. So they were like 3-5% of the overall fund, if you will, without putting any money in. And we wound up, it was like a 6-man group. And I can tell you, just having 6 people all working together, very type A personalities, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of stress. Like if you couldn't get a hold of a guy at 8:30 a.m., you're like, where are you? What's going on? And we were all working like 16 hours a week. It's not like, we were just like slacking and the like. So I can only imagine trying to have like dozens of type A's all working together. I don't think it would work, Ross. And think about this. If you have 100 people in a syndicate and they're all equal and you bet $10,000, it's hard to bet $10,000. Good luck trying to get $10,000 on Hamilton, BC over 51. Well, it's $100 each. Is that going to pay the bills to make a $100 bet? You hit 55%, you have a 5% ROI. Woohoo! I just made $5. That's
So next week, we're going to have Chris Farley join us at Farley Bets. He got 5th in the Circa Sports Million this past year, made $114,000. For that 5th place finish, 68% ATS hit rate a year ago. Looking forward. It turns out, Steve, he's from my hometown. So I'm looking forward to talking with Chris. He's younger than me and went to sort of a rival high school. So that'll be great. I'm mentioning that because the week after that, it'll be August 2nd. And we will be diving into starting to get into how you bet preseason games and the like. Maybe we'll have one more guest. Maybe we'll save it till the next week to dive into preseason games. But that week right there is when the Hall of Fame game is, in 2 weeks. So I'm mentioning that because we have a backlog of emails. We have a lot of people, Steve, that like to ask you questions, and you can do so by emailing me, ross@rosstucker.com. We have an incredible resource in Steve for you guys to be able to ask your betting questions. Anybody can email me a question. As a reminder, if you take advantage of one of our sponsors, either that you hear me say on the show or myfrontpagestory.com, or you see it on the sponsors page at rosstucker.com, you go to the top of the queue. And we have so many emails, Steve, that we actually have your own intro. It's time to ask Steve.
Ever wanted to ask a professional sports bettor a question? It's time to Ask Steve.
Absolutely love that. Great job by producer Brian in getting that. All right, the first one comes to us from one of our patrons, Steve. This is my buddy Norm. He became a patron at patreon.com/RTmedia, which, by the way, I'm glad I'm mentioning this. We post, one of our patrons, Sean Grades, he posts all of our bets each week during the NFL season on our Patreon. We have a private Slack channel. He posts it there. So for whatever it is, $10 a month, you don't have to write down, what Steve and I say here on the show on Tuesday mornings. So anyway, so Norm is one of our patrons, patreon.com/RTmedia. He said, what kind of gambling degenerate is betting NBA Summer League? I can't believe they have lines. And my initial thought, Steve, on this was, to me, this is one of the differentiators that I have found between recreational bettors and professional bettors. Professional bettors will bet on anything and everything if they think they have an edge, like you on CFL, like you on WNBA. People that are really recreational, they're like, oh, you got to be a degenerate to bet on that stuff. I don't bet on that stuff. I just bet on the NFL or college football. Professional bettors like you, Steve, you don't look at it that way.
Yes, and it helps because I'm currently not part of a syndicate. I just share information back and forth with some people. So 100% of the money I bet, I risk. So I don't have to worry about these low limits. Why do syndicates not bet the NBA Summer League? It's not that it's not beatable. It's not that you can't get some great information if you are following all the teams and who might be more motivated, who might not be playing their star player that day. But the limits are so low, it's too little by the time you spread it all out to make anything. But for individual bettors, the NBA Summer League is a great choice. Same with the WNBA. I'll use an example. I gave out New York Liberty last night, +8. Barstool had 9, by the way. I gave out +8 because that was the widely available number. Great bet. I won't get into all the reasons. I doubt anyone cares. Now the Liberty only getting 5. Well, if I had to bet the game now, I'd lean to the Connecticut Sun at -5, just a little bit. But you see my point. When am I ever in the NBA going to get a 3-point differential, betting the night before, unless I've got, that information? It happens all the time on these lesser sports. So NBA Summer League, cockroach racing, pretty much anything that we can have an edge and we can get down. Hot dog eating. Joey Chestnut. Think about it, Ross. Joey Chestnut hot dog eating. Over under 74.5. The world record was 76, set by himself. Dude is injured. Dude can't walk. Dude's coming in on the sticks, and he's going to suddenly be able to set a world record. Does that sound like a likely or a plausible thing, or something that's very unlikely? A lot of people I know made good coin fading Joey Chestnut, All-American hero, in the hot dog eating contest.
A lot of unders, huh?
A lot of unders. I think he consumed 63 dogs. Having to choke out the protester probably didn't help him.
All right. Then we got Dave from New Jersey, Steve. And he said, hi, guys. I use the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Big fan. Steve, I hear betting unders is more profitable in the long run. Do you have a specific strategy for choosing your unders to bet? Is there a sport or bet you find easiest to find profitable under wagers? Thanks, Steve. Dave. So he's talking about any sport, and he just wants to get in on your I initially thought he was talking about NFL games or football games. He's just saying, okay, you always talk about unders. Under what? How?
Well, how timely is this with the MLB All-Star game going today? And we just spoke about how the markets are irrational and they price this based upon really good hitters, and they ignore the fact that the pitchers have the edge and the number's always too high. So betting the MLB All-Star game under is very rarely a bad idea. Part of the reason that unders are so much better than overs, let's talk season wins, by example. Let's say you're looking at a team like the Cowboys and their season wins right around 10. You're never going to find a 9.5, ever. You're never going to get a rogue low number because the public is betting these bets over. The fans of the teams bet over. However, if you're betting unders, you get rogue numbers all the time. You're going to be able to find a 10.5 on the Cowboys. You're going to be able to get that extra half point on the high side because the books get a little bit overloaded. They move up a little bit, and this happens every year in the Super Bowl. If the total in the Super Bowl is 48, you're always going to be able to find a 49 at a recreation shop. You're never going to be able to find a 47. So when you're shopping around and you're looking for rogue numbers, you're going to get much better value betting unders than betting overs. So even if the market number goes over or under right around 50%, there's still going to be select opportunities if you have enough outs at enough places around the world and in the U.S. to play under.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So basically, the way to do it is just keep doing research and look for the one number that isn't in line with everybody else. It'll always be to the over, to the high side. So that's the one you hit on the under.
Exactly right. So it wouldn't be unusual. A Colorado Rockies game, if the total's 11, I'm never going to see a 10.5, but there'll be an 11.5 at a place or two. Not unusual at all.
You say recreational book. I guess what I don't understand about that is I would think they would be the most likely one to be with the consensus, what everybody else is doing.
Initially, Ross. So what's a recreational book? Oh, Boyd Gaming, Station Casinos, Treasure Island, Golden Nugget. So they'll start with where the market is. And guess what? Their limits are pretty low. And they go ahead and ask people not to play, tell people, select people that they can't play against them. So there's no sharps playing against these guys. And so what happens is they get overloaded. So the public just bets over, and they pull it up in the spreadsheet like, oh, we have 9,000 on this game over and we got 1,000 on the under. We better move it to 11.5 and start getting some two-way action. So they'll move that.
That makes sense. You know what else makes sense? Following this man on social media at Fezzik Sports. He is awesome. I can't believe we are 2 weeks away from being able to bet on a professional football game in the National Football League. That's amazing. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. Don't forget to sign up to be a patron. Now's the time to do it. Patreon.com/RTmedia, or take advantage of any of our sponsors if you want to ask Steve a question for next week, the week after, whatever. It is just about here, just about time. Really fired up, by the way, about next week's episode with Chris Farley. It should be good. Other than that, good luck, everybody. Hope you guys win some money.
Thanks for listening to the Even Money Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, The Fantasy Feast, Business of Sports, and the College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.